A truck driver in Maryland took Ozempic for 6 months. He woke up one morning and couldn't see out of his right eye. He kept taking the drug. Nobody told him there was a connection. 10 months later, he woke up blind in the other eye too. His name is Todd Engel. He's legally blind now. He had to leave a job he loved. He can't see his grandchildren. And what Novo Nordisk, the company behind Ozempic, told the court? They knew. They identified cases during clinical trials. They just didn't put it on the label. Today, there are over 3,000 active lawsuits against Ozempic and Wegovy in federal court. And that number is growing every single week. But that's not even the most alarming part of this story. Stay with me. Because what I'm about to show you goes much deeper than blindness. Let's start with what the companies themselves found in their own studies and chose not to put on the label. The clinical trials for Ozempic and Wegovy are called the STEP trials. Thousands of patients, rigorous data, all funded and conducted by Novo Nordisk. Here's what those trials showed. The muscle problem. Research from the STEP trials consistently found that between 20 and 50% of the weight lost on these medications comes not from fat, but from lean mass. That includes muscle. Think about what that means. If you lose 30 pounds on Ozempic, somewhere between 6 and 15 of those pounds might be muscle, not fat. And muscle is not just about appearance. Muscle protects your joints. It supports your metabolism. It keeps you mobile and independent as you age. Experts say that the muscle loss seen in 68-week clinical studies of semaglutide equates to roughly 20 years of aging in terms of muscle deterioration. 20 years in less than 2 years of treatment. Now, is muscle loss listed as a side effect on the Ozempic label? The manufacturer does not list muscle loss as a side effect in the FDA product labeling for Ozempic. They ran the studies. They saw the numbers. The label doesn't mention it. The bone problem. It gets worse. At the annual meeting of the American Academy of Orthopedic Surgeons in March 2026, data from nearly 150,000 adults showed that GLP-1 users had approximately 30% higher odds of developing osteoporosis and nearly double the risk of bone density loss over 5 years. Spine, hip. The bones most likely to fracture, most likely to put an older adult in a hospital, and never come home the same. And Wegovy? The label notes that more hip fractures were reported in women on Wegovy than in the placebo group. But it stops there. It doesn't connect the dots for you. The data is in their own documents. It always was. It's all public record. Now let's talk about the lawsuit that started it all. Gastroparesis, stomach paralysis. This is a condition where the stomach stops emptying food properly. It causes constant nausea, vomiting, severe pain. For some people, it never resolves, even after stopping the drug. In a court hearing on January 13, 2026, Novo Nordisk's own attorney confirmed that 75% of the lawsuits in MDL 3094, the federal litigation in Pennsylvania, list gastroparesis or stomach paralysis as the primary injury. Another 18% list ileus, which is an impairment of bowel function that can require emergency surgery. 75%. Now here's the critical detail. The Ozempic label does mention gastrointestinal side effects, nausea, vomiting. That's there. But the label was only updated in January 2025 to state that Ozempic is not recommended in patients with severe gastroparesis. It does not indicate that the drug itself may cause the condition. Read that again. They say, don't take it if you already have stomach paralysis. But they don't tell you it might give you stomach paralysis. That's the distinction their lawyers are fighting over in court right now. Now back to Todd Engel. and the growing wave of cases like his. The condition is called NAION, non-arteritic anterior ischemic optic neuropathy. It's a sudden loss of blood flow to the optic nerve. When it happens, vision can be gone in a single day. There is currently no treatment to restore it. A study published in JAMA Ophthalmology found that patients with type 2 diabetes taking semaglutide had more than a 4-fold higher risk of developing NAION compared to those not on a GLP-1 drug. For overweight people taking semaglutide for weight loss, the risk was more than 7-fold higher, 7 times higher. A second study from Denmark, involving more than 400,000 patients, found that semaglutide users had more than double the risk of NAION compared to those on other diabetes medications. 2 independent research groups, massive data sets, consistent findings. What did regulators do? In August 2024, the European Medicines Agency required updated warning labels for semaglutide drugs to include the NAION risk. Europe acted, updated the label, warned patients. As of early 2026, NAION is still not listed as an adverse drug reaction on the approved labels for Ozempic, Wegovy, or Rybelsus in the United States. The same drug. Different warning in Europe. Different warning in the U.S. On March 13, 2026, the FDA sent a formal warning letter to Novo Nordisk over a potential failure to properly report side effects connected to these drugs. The agency highlighted serious violations in the company's reporting. The FDA itself is now saying they may not have reported what they were supposed to report. Legal experts now say the NAION cases are generating more attention than even the gastroparesis lawsuits, because the injury is so severe, so sudden, and so permanent. Permanent blindness, without warning, in one day. Let's zoom out for a moment, because there's a pattern here that's worth understanding. These medications reduce appetite dramatically. Weight comes off. For many people, the results are significant. But studies consistently find that 25 to 40% of the weight lost comes from lean mass, not just fat. And when people stop? The data from Novo Nordisk's own Step 1 extension study shows that the weight comes back. Most of it. Within a year or two of stopping. This is why the Wegovy label includes the phrase, "Continuous treatment is necessary." In other words, to keep the weight off, you take it for life. Think about what that means for a business generating nearly $31 billion a year from these 3 drugs combined. Ozempic, Wegovy, and Mounjaro. Lean mass loss wasn't included in the label. Bone density loss wasn't clearly in the label. NAION wasn't in the U.S. label. But use it forever. That made it in. The data was always in their own documents. All of it is public record. Now, if you are taking one of these medications or someone you love is, this next part matters. This is not about fear. It's about information you deserve to have. The research is clear on what actually protects your muscle and bone during significant weight loss, whether you're on a GLP-1 drug or not. First, resistance training, not optional. A case series published in medical literature showed that GLP-1 users who performed structured resistance training 3 to 5 days per week not only preserved muscle, some actually increased lean mass while losing significant body fat. The drug does the fat loss. The training protects what you can't afford to lose. Second, protein. When appetite is suppressed, protein intake quietly drops. That's one of the biggest drivers of muscle loss in GLP-1. Wessers, not the drug directly, but the calorie restriction it creates without enough protein to compensate. Third, know the warning signs. Any sudden change in vision, blurred, dark spots, loss in one eye, is a medical emergency. Don't wait. Don't assume it's something else. Get to an eye doctor or emergency room immediately. Time is the difference between partial and total loss. And fourth, if you've experienced stomach paralysis, bowel obstruction, or sudden vision loss after taking Ozempic, Wegovy, or Mounjaro, there are currently active federal litigations specifically for these injuries. The cases are ongoing. Settlements have not yet been reached. That means the window is still open. The weight loss results are real. I'm not disputing that. But here's the question nobody's asking loudly enough. If a company runs a clinical trial, sees that patients are losing muscle at the rate of 20 years of aging, and doesn't put that on the label, if they see cases of sudden blindness in their own trials and don't disclose it to patients in the US the way they disclosed it in Europe, if the FDA itself sends them a formal warning letter for failing to report side effects, what else don't we know yet? That's not a conspiracy. That's a federal lawsuit. 3,363 of them. If this video gave you information you needed, share it with someone who's considering this medication or already taking it. They deserve to make an informed decision. And if you want to understand how to actually protect your muscle mass and bone density through this, leave a comment below. That's the next video.